The following program is sponsored by The Greek, Ely's Radio Shack dealer at 570 Altman in downtown Ely, and brought to you as a public service by Georgetown Media in Ely, Nevada. White Pine County Commission meeting, October 26th, 2022.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But that was, yeah.
Meeting, we'll start with the pledge. Shane, how about you lead us this morning?
Certainly, would you follow me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll take a moment for a moment of silence and we'll start right in. Thank you. We'll begin the meeting with public comment, and Commissioner Bullis is on Zoom. So I'll call the first person forward. Whoever wants to be, well, we'll check on Zoom first if there's anyone want to make a public comment. Okay, then we'll go here to the room. Public comment.
Good morning. My name is Greg Copeland with Art Plus Hydro, and I wanted to give you a quick update on some project highlights and updates of some of the activities that are going on. And I'll talk fast so I can get it in the time frame. There's 5 different things that have happened recently that I think bear up on the project's progress. Most recently, the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by Congress and was passed into law actually specifically mentions pump storage hydro as a highlighted item that is brought out and spoken about in that bill. So we're expecting and have seen a significant uptick in interest on pump storage hydro because of the result of that. There are some elements of that bill that are still being worked out with the IRS with regard to domestic content and some of those things, but that's very encouraging with regard to the potential for pump storage hydro to continue forward in the country. Comments have been received from the stakeholders on the draft license application. They're being addressed and or resolved, and in preparation for filing the final license application in the first quarter of 2023. We recently received the approval from the Nevada State Engineers Office for the change in the permitted usage and the point of diversion for the groundwater permits, and I believe you've gotten notification of that. And also the $50,000 payment has been made. We got confirmation of that also. Those are for the purposes of sourcing the construction phase water and the reservoir fill water for the projects. We're working with the National Park Service and with the Nevada Historic Railroad regarding the visual impact study, the passenger usage surveys, and completing a supplement to the socioeconomic study. We're hoping to be able to complete that work by the end of the year. That supplement for those studies will then appear within the final license application. The other thing that's probably most important is we completed the geotechnical work for phase 2. The seismic reflectometry work for the lower reservoir has been complete. The seismic refractometry work for the upper reservoir has been complete. We dug 4 seismic trenches for seismic activity history. Those areas have been reclaimed. Geophysical engineering mapping is complete. The borehole drilling is complete for borehole 1A and 1. We actually hit bedrock at 395 feet below ground surface, and we have some evidence that there's about 160 feet of groundwater above bedrock, which is really good news. And then the draft engineering feasibility study report, the revision to that will be out in mid-November. And then ready to submit the application for the hydrogeologic study and the well drilling that'll be associated with that for performance and production well verification.
That's 3 minutes, so thank you, Greg.
Get going.
All right, next person for public comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. Since we have,
Go ahead.
sorry, since we have NDOT here, I was wondering if we can get them to address the roadway that is around the railroad tracks coming outside of McGill. I don't know how long it's been since some of you have driven over those tracks, but that road is a mess. You have to go swerve one way as you're going into McGill, as you're coming out of McGill, you have to swerve another way because the road has sunk and there's a big dip there. I've actually had a headlight knocked out because someone blew a tire. And as I was going over there, somebody else flipped that piece of tire up and broke my headlight. So I'd like at some point to see NDOT do something about that roadway. It's a mess. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person for public comment. Nobody? George?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, you have, on your fire district, you have not allocated a public comment period. This is the third request.
We've addressed that with the DA
I
before,
did.
George, so.
What I'm telling you is, he stated that there was a statute that it's not needed. Give me the statute, that's
You
all
can
I'm
come to my
asking.
office, you know how to get a hold of me. I take appointments for
Send me a
anybody.
letter.
I take
Send me a letter.
appointments for
It can
everybody.
be a Dear John letter, doesn't matter.
Next item, George.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the golf course has put in a new parking lot. The project does not meet minimum curb and gutter standards. They have failed to put in concrete sidewalks as required by city code. Again, we either have rules or we don't. Mr. Chairman, the Regional Planning Commission continues to selectively enforce codes. They need to be disbanded and held accountable. That board should not have full authority, full approval. We're going from one fiasco to the other, and I can't get a simple permit. And I'm not just mad, I'm human. Mr. Chairman, on your agenda, you've got an item regarding the NDOT presentation. I want to remind you of some concerns I've had for over a year now. In regards to the Nevada NDOT Administration Code, Access 2.6 and 2.7 regarding ADA. I still have a problem at the end of my property at 710 Avenue G. I dropped 1 foot off my parking lot. Nobody else does that. I'm a patient man, but I want equal protection under the law. I go up and down that street, nobody else has that same problem, only me. And it isn't that I didn't make any attempt to rectify it before the thing was paved or the concrete was poured, numerous times. And I don't want Regina Pierce back here. It's one thing to lie to somebody, but she's not lying to me no more. I don't want her here. Mr. Chairman, NDOT is putting in a project on Avenue D between 14th and 15th. I told you that. Again, no ADA access, no sidewalk, not my rules, federal regulations. What are we paying all these people for? I told you last time at the last meeting that there was a semi parked in the travel lane up there by the Copper Queen, which I thought was odd, so I went around the corner, and here we have a loaning ramp coming off the truck, across the sidewalk, blocking access. Again, we either have rules or we don't. That's pretty pathetic. It's got to stop. Also on the corner of Campton and Great Basin, you have semis coming across that parking lot, completely blocking the lane. You have traffic coming across on the sidewalk, poor design. On Great Basin Boulevard, it was supposed to be straightened out. You look at
There's a signal,
those
George,
access.
finish this point.
And again, Avenue D going on Highway 93.
Thank you.
Still knocking down the stop sign. I don't want anybody hurt, Mr. Chairman, especially you.
All right, that brings us to the close of public comment.
I'd
so-
like to make,
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Your tax dollars, I wanna recognize Rec Brothers for their work that they did on our White Pine County Golf Course. It's in the best shape it's ever been in. They went over and above, not only did they do the parking lot, they, on their own, they went over and above, they painted the building, they painted all the, stencils for the directions. It's a fantastic thing. They tore down the old sheds. It's your money, that course has not been touched since 1959, that parking lot. And it is fantastic. It looks like a real, they took down the old sheds. It's, you look at that from the highway, or even if you play, I play every day. So if you go in there, it's a fantastic facility. We really improved it. We put our money to good use, and Rec Brothers, our local contractor, which is probably the best in the state as far as laying asphalt and doing their work and being meticulous, they should be recognized, and this board, I'm sure, has all been out there, but your money has been put to good use, and they did a fantastic job, and that company should be recognized for going over and above their original contract, for doing a lot of little tiny things, pulling weeds. So that is my comment to that. I go out there every day, and I think it's a real plus to this community to have a facility that looks like that as you approach this community coming in from the east to the west. So Rec Brothers, thank you very, very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Richard, and then Mike notified me we do have one on Zoom.
I believe it's Cody Coombs.
Cody, you're up.
I guess not.
I still have a few items,
All
if
right.
you don't mind.
So we'll close public comment and enter into our first item, 9 o'clock. NDOT White Pine County Leadership Meeting, discussion presentation by the Nevada Department of Transportation regarding the county consultation process, NDOT annual work program within the county, and One Nevada process, members of the NDOT executive leadership team. Just proactive use of our time. It's 9:11, so let's try to have this done in about 20 minutes. So go ahead, floor is yours.
I think I can handle that. For the record, I'm Cole Morrison, Deputy Director for the Department of Transportation. I wanted to come out and just go over a few things with you guys, including our county consultation process and some of the other things that we have going on. Next slide, please. So we'll go through the engagement process. I'll talk a little bit about our One Nevada process, which is how we prioritize projects statewide. We'll discuss our annual work program, and then a little bit about some of our other initiatives. Currently, we have about 410 miles of state and U.S. highways in White Pine County. Over the last year, about $2.45 million in motor fuel and diesel taxes have been generated from White Pine County. The rural engagement process is a continuous process that we have throughout the state, engaging with city and county officials. Generally, we try to find out what their priorities are and figure out how we can get that into our One Nevada plan to find out where we should be investing our dollars. We're really hoping to improve the coordination between the rural cities and counties as far as transportation planning goes. Next slide, please. So this is a brief overview about what our process is here. We start off with county workshops where we have staff come out to meet with the local agencies. It was held early in 2022. We'll do some analysis of the priorities coming out of that. And then generally we come back to you at some point in time to meet with county leadership to discuss where we're at, what our priorities are. And then we continue that process in evaluating the projects through our One Nevada plan. So again, county workshops, as I mentioned earlier, we do try to meet with everyone and figure out what some of the issues are and see what we can get rectified and see what we can prioritize in the future. What we look at when we're doing our One Nevada transportation process, we have 6 categories that we evaluate each need as it approaches into a project, and I'll talk about that in a second. We look at enhancing safety, optimizing mobility, preserving infrastructure, transforming economies, connecting communities, and fostering sustainability. So we do, as I mentioned, we do the workshops. The next workshop will be in the spring of 2023, and then we track and analyze the requests through the One Nevada process in coordination with our district offices, which you guys have one located right here in Ely. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at the data-driven prioritization process on those 6 categories. Next slide. So generally, we start off with is a need. As for an example, if we have an intersection and we're evaluating it, we know that there's an issue there. But at that point in time, we may not know whether we're gonna do a signal or whether we're gonna do a roundabout or whether it's just a stop sign. And so then we'll get to the concept phase of it and we'll evaluate again for the 6 categories, and then eventually they become a project and we can try to get it into our state run. So here in District 3, some of the maintenance activities that we've had about 1,300 labor hours for maintenance out here. Right now, we're actually struggling statewide with our maintenance workers. We're at a little over 50% vacant on our state maintenance employees, so we actually do have some concerns, especially approaching winter here, as far as being able to keep our roads plowed. We've done about 74 miles of pavement preservation, totaling about $1.3 million in 21 and 22. We did the SR 318 safety improvements near the Lanes truck stop, extending the shoulder and creating more traversable slope. Next slide, please. So for our 23-24 work program, we have about $14.7 million planned for the investments in White Pine County, which, you know, as far as the rate of return on the tax dollars that were generated here, that's a significant increase. We've got an ADA project in McGill, a multi-use path in Baker, along with other pavement preservation projects throughout the county. Next slide. One of the things we are working on statewide is a passing and climbing lane study. And as we identify areas where we need to implement passing lanes and climbing lanes, we'll start working on getting those prioritized as well. We anticipate having draft recommendations released later this year. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, in addition to the bipartisan infrastructure law, there is safety funds available to local agencies that have local road safety plans in place. So we've been reaching out to work with cities and counties on getting those in place, and makes the agencies potentially available for additional federal fundings. We want to make it consistent with our strategic highway safety plan to correct or improve any hazards and address safety problems. Total crashes in White Pine County in 2020 were 114 of those. There was 1 fatal crash and 36 injury crashes. We have 2020 data up there because there's a lag in getting the data from DPS and from their evaluations to when we actually have it in our database. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about the bipartisan infrastructure law. We received about a 20% increase in our federal funding, which equates to about 10 to 12% increase in our overall program. The problem is that we've seen about a 17% increase in inflation over the last year. So really the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're excited to have a 5-year bill in place, but it's really kind of helping us deliver what we expect to deliver. Right now, we anticipate that overall as a state, we're about $600 million short on an annual basis to maintain our existing system and keep up with the explosive growth that we've seen statewide. One of the advantages of the bipartisan infrastructure law is that we have, there's about 40% of the funding that's available for competitive discretionary grants. And those come in different categories, whether it's mega projects, bridge funding, safety, and in addition to others. They do have an emphasis in the bill on safety, resilience, and equity. Next slide, please. So our next step is to, of course, implement our annual work program, but we'd also like to continue the collaboration between NDOT and the local agencies. And as I mentioned earlier, the One Nevada process really is a continuous data-driven process for prioritizing our projects in the future. And with that concludes my presentation. Well into the 20 minutes.
I'll just add my comment because I've been doing it for 10 years. Same thing, same group, all the time. So we commonly address the passing lanes for 250 miles. You drive up the bay, 250 miles, not one passing lane. Trucks, cars, the safety on 318. I keep bringing it up, I know it's repetitious. However, not 10 years. And you'll be back here in the spring of 22 saying you've done a feasibility study. All's well and good. But you know what? That road is still nasty. I can't even go down and see my son. I'm 72 years old, and I'm afraid to drive on that road. I seriously am. So from October to May, it's bad weather. But even in the summertime, that road is awful. There's gotta be a way. Between Ely and Lodges, there's 3. There's three in that 40-mile stretch. We have 250 miles from Ely to Las Vegas and not one. So when there's accidents, and you mentioned accidents, you did say 114, but it's really 141. That's what you have on your
Sorry.
paper, but that's okay. So I just wanna say what I always say, and I always bitch about it, and I'm gonna bitch until I'm gone. But that state road, 318, all the way to Las Vegas has got to be upgraded. Even if you go every 20 miles, I don't care, but we need some way to get around 3 and 4 semis without getting hit head on the way back. So that, you hear it all the time from me and from this board and from the citizens of White Pine County, and I'll continue to say it. That road needs some turnout lanes. We need help, and people are dying on that road. One death is too many, but people are dying on that road. And I know you'll come back here in early spring, and I'll hear the same thing, so I'll just wait until early spring and hear it again. So thank you for allowing me to say my piece.
Shane, we'll go to you with any comments from you, Lori.
No, I've made I'm kinda like Richard, I've been beating the same, the two intersections that I've been interested in, and I've brought these up at meetings ever since I've been on the board, is at Loggy's Junction, and then also down at 6 and 318. If there's any way that we can make approach lanes on those, merge lanes. So that, because there's so many times you see cars coming up to those, and the trucks just barrel right through the stop sign, especially up here at Loggy's Junction, because that's an uphill pull, and so they don't want to come to a stop. It's hard to get started again, and man, I have been in the bar ditch so many times, and if we could just give them that oncoming where 93 intersects there to a nice merge lane, so they can roll through that stop sign and then have a stretch to merge in and roll. I think it would really increase our safety.
Lori?
Yes, you talked about some funds available in regards if you have a safety plan in place, and NDOT is supposed to help with that.
Yeah, we do have staff that's reaching out to coordinate with the local city and county agencies to help them, assist them in getting those safety plans together, and I can get you more information on who to contact for that.
Okay, and working with our Public Works Director, Bill Calderwood. Okay, Colleen? Okay, that, and I also want to echo what both Shane and Richard have said, because I've experienced it myself too. There was a bicycle that, there's the rumble strip, and you've got about 2 feet, maybe a little more than that, going past outside of McGill. And there's people that bicycle on that, and they were on the inside lane, headed north. And this was probably just outside of the Duck Creek turnoff. And there was I couldn't get his attention. He had headphones on, but he was in my lane and I could not get around him. So there was a truck that was coming. I had a semi behind me. When I started to hit my brakes, the semi could not stop quick enough, went around me and around the other truck. There was another semi behind him, and they also went around. So I'm happy to say I'm still sitting here, but we've got to do something. If you're going to put in bike lanes, there's got to be some cohesiveness with it, or signs stating it runs no further or something, because I was very lucky that day. So anyhow. Travis?
Ian, do you have anything?
It sounds like it's been covered pretty well. I hate to say it, but, and I haven't gone out and inspected, but, George has brought up a couple of things that made some sense when they did some of that, resurfacing and everything, and it seemed like some of his businesses had been left without, a driveway or whatever. I just hope that we're just gonna pay more attention to that stuff when they're repaving things, and I know stuff gets missed, they got a big job, but, nobody should have to have their property, messed with like that, no matter who they are. So anyway, that was something I remembered that I was gonna bounce off of them next time they came to town. But everything else, I agree. Turn lanes, the Shane, you're absolutely right, that would make that intersection way safer. And, passing lanes for sure.
Thanks, Ian. As far as myself, I think all my comments, everyone's already brought up. As far as the lanes here in town that were just redone, my personal opinion, I hate them, how it was done, but that's just me. Anyway, if nobody else has anything, ask if you guys have any further comments or questions.
I don't have any further comments or questions, thank you.
Yeah, specifically, I know as commissioners, we get a lot of complaints about the way the lanes were changed in front of Cal Ranch. And those people are sitting out trying to turn in, and there's no turn lane.
Alrighty, thanks you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our 9:15. We'll open up the fire commission. Discussion possible action to address facility needs for the Cold Creek Fire Station in lieu of constructing new building, prioritizing tasks, and allocating funding from SB 74, or identify alternative funding sources not to exceed $90,000. Mike Weedle, Bill Paulwood, and Brett North.
Morning.
Morning, Brett.
So, let me just take the first dive on this and try to outline the discussion. We previously in this meeting had authorized and allocated up to $500,000 for a new structure, a new fire station building out in the Cold Creek area to house the fire engines that we have out there, and the apparatuses. You know, and then we had some more discussion later that 90% of the calls out there are ELM grass fire calls, and we're trying to find a more economical way to address the needs out there instead of spending $500,000 out in that country. We do have an obligation, an agreement with the mine to house the equipment they purchased in that area. So right now, I'd like to shift directions, and talking with Bill and Brett, we're exploring just making improvements to the existing building. You know, it's been dilapidated. They put Bill's crew put a bunch of work into securing the metal siding and kind of buttoning it up for the winter. At this point, it seems that the agreement was that the mine may, I'm talking about KGVM, we'll do some trenching and get some better electrical supply to that building so that we can have more consistent and better heating in that building. So on our part, what I'd like to do is instead of building a new building, I've explored, and I think Brett and Bill are on the same page, we'd like to just pour a concrete floor and get some insulation and make repairs to the existing building, and that would save the taxpayers a grip of money and also allow us to use those SB 74 funds throughout the district for other needs across the fire district. So that's kind of what I'm just want to discuss that change in direction. Allow Brett to comment if there are any questions, because he met with the mine staff and was out there with Bill, and I think it's just an economical and better solution this time.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's our best option out there is put a little money into that building. Maintenance went out this summer and buttoned it up, and they put some more trim on it and kind of buttoned up some of the places where air was getting in it and blowing the tin off. So it's pretty good shape, actually, the building. It just needs some upgrades.
So the plan is if the board authorizes at this time this new direction, Bill's gonna have his crew start working on it before the winter time hits, and then we can do the installation and some studying and some burning inside the building during the winter, when it's convenient for that crew. Bill, do you have anything you wanna add to that?
I think in the backup material, in that backup material with that letter is kind of what I addressed that we need to take care of. And some of it will be contracted or whatever we need to do to get moving forward, and we'll work with the mine to make sure that they're covered, because that truck needs to be in there per the agreement with the county, so.
Yes, and that truck is back in there now. I got a hold of JJ, because they had him out of there when that building was dilapidated, but I got a hold of JJ finally on Monday, I believe it was, and he was gonna make sure that truck got back in there this week, so it should be in there. He planned to put it in there Monday night, so.
I have a question.
Yep.
Yes, speaking of JJ, I know that he was not able to make it to that meeting. So during your visit with him, did you have an opportunity to, because he made a trip out here to talk with us about it. So explain to him the change, especially in regards to the initial agreement with the mine?
Yes, I did. I updated him on what we plan to do and everything, so he was fine with it.
Yeah, I know, you know,
Okay.
the preference would have been to build a new station further, south on that road,
But more southern,
but,
south on that road.
Right,
you know, and honestly, we're protecting the apparatus through our partnership with the mine, and so we need to lean towards just keeping that building right where it's at right now, and not putting it too much, you know, making sure it's adequate, safe, and warm, so nothing freezes or nothing.
Is there any way, I always harp on it, to ask Eureka to try to help us out on the funding part of this, even with this 90,000? I mean, they do, service that building, and service that place in their truck, but any money we spend out there, maybe Eureka County could chip in a few bucks to help us along the way instead of us paying the whole, amount of money. And asking, and I think Eureka's in favor of that, but I think it would help us to, as we move forward, to go to Eureka and say, okay, we need this much money.
Don't we have propane, do they pay the fuel charges out there, Bill, do you know?
Yeah, they're currently paying the propane, and the mine pays the power.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a three-way partnership out there, and, you know, and that apparatus is mostly, like we said, the calls have been for BLM, Plant Eureka or White Pine, it's just, that's what that apparatus has been used for, but it's actually a safeguard for that man camp there as well, so, which is on our side of the property. If it ran into Eureka County and did more calls, I think I'd be more comfortable asking them to pay for it, but the fact they're paying our propane bill now, I think is, it's pretty expensive.
I didn't know they paid the propane, but any kind of usage that we all chip in a little bit, they pay propane, they pay lights, whatever,
Right.
whatever, but, so that we don't fund and pay for the entire building, and Eureka's using it, so anything we can get to chip in to help us fund this, is good.
Yeah, and we can have those conversations, and JJ can get it on the board agenda if necessary. And it's not to exceed 90, we're gonna get some bids on the concrete, see what we can get done, and I think that should be adequate, but we may not spend all of it, I'm just letting you know.
All right, well, I'll call, if no one has any more questions, I'll call for the motion to approve.
motion to approve is presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimous. Thanks you guys for sharpening pencils on that, so good work. Item 2, discussion for possible action to utilize SB 74 funds to purchase 2 lightly used smaller water tender fire apparatuses not to exceed $150,000 each for deployment within the fire district. Mike Level, County Manager, and Brett North, Fire Chief.
So I just wanted to, I asked the board to have this be a discussion item only. We're planning to find some additional funds for these fire trucks, so we don't have to use up the SB 74 funds we have. It just might take us a little longer, but we have a couple grants that we're gonna be looking at in January that we might be able to use for apparatus. I will tell you now, for the purpose of discussion, what we're looking at here is, what Coal Creek really needs is a tender to have water that they can deploy easier, because there's not hydrants out there, of course. And similarly with Cherry Creek, they are also looking to get a tender out there, but they have to be special tenders that fit in the buildings that we have. You know, we do have a huge water tender up at the EOC that gets deployed, but it won't fit in any of these outlying, it'll freeze outside of these buildings. So this is gonna be like a water truck size tender that we can put inside these buildings. And I'll bring that back in January. If we don't find grant funding for these apparatus, then we can explore using SB 74 funds. And this is also why we want to move away from $500,000 in Cold Creek for the station, so we can use those funds and disperse it across the county fire district. So it's just discussion. If you have any questions or suggestions, that's we're open to it.
I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Do you have anything, Pat?
How much does a water tender cost?
It's gonna, a single water tender could be anywhere between $120,000 to $300,000 probably, depending on how used it is or the condition.
They're hard to find right now too. It's like anything else. Everybody's buying them up, so I've looked and inquired about them a little bit, and right now they're hard to find, so when it comes time to do it, it's gonna be
Grab it.
yeah.
The overall, we're developing a plan. Brett just did the inventory, but we're going to try to look across the district and see what would best serve the communities and possibly start replacing some of the apparatus out there. we don't have a lot of tenders deployed in the district, so.
We've got a tender in Ruth, a tender in Miguel, tender in Lund, and a tender at Station One, so.
Thank you.
So just discussion only for now, yep, okay, thanks you guys. Item 3, discuss possible action approval of minutes from the September 28th and October 12th Fire Commission meeting. James, can I vote on October 12th since I wasn't here? Or do I
Yes, because it's not a conflict, so yes.
Okay. I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes.
I have just a quick clarification in regards to October 12th, where it says chairman, and it does say that, up in the heading, that the chairman was absent, but then down on the bottom it says chairman also, and either it should be vice chair or acting chair. Just a quick clarification there. And with that change, motion to approve both the September 28th and the October 12th of 2022.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimous. Thanks, Brett. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Mike. Okay, we will go to our 9:30, proposed ordinance 531, first reading discussion only regarding proposed ordinance 531, bill number 1026, 2022, an ordinance amending Title 6 of the White Pine County Code by adding Chapter 6.5 in order to regulate open burning within White Pine County. District Attorney James Beecher and Fire Chief Brett North.
This is, my office drafted this at the request of and in cooperation with the fire chief here about open burning. Basically, it just sets out limitations on what can be burned, when it can be burned, the need for a permit. It does have in there that if a permitting process requires fees, the board would have to pass that by resolution, so right now it doesn't contain that. And then if you have any other questions, then me or Brett can field those.
I tend to just naturally be against this stuff, adding 10 pages of regulations in. I'm sure what you guys have in mind here is a good intent and all, but I just look at this for, 50 years going forward and have, bad people try to use these against, just thinking, and I know there's the exceptions in here for, ranchers and whatnot for burning trash and this, that, and the other, but I just think this is a slippery slope to go down in a lot of ways that could happen in the future should someone want to use this code in a bad way. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I kind of, it's very extensive. And as a former ranch / farm owner, you can't always pick the day and then have to do it right within that time frame because the weather changes and it might be the next day or it's the next morning and then you have to stop by 10 o'clock. So it's very restrictive to actually get some decent work done.
Yeah, this started out, I wanted to be able to shut down burning in the prime summertime when fires really take off.
But that's the prime time when it's drier, that people do their ditches.
Most of them do it in winter, in the fall and winter. That's where I get most of my calls.
Okay.
But with as dry as it is anymore, it's just such a risk to let people take off and just burn in July or August. So that was the intent to start with, and then it just kind of grew from there with Ross Smiley working on this.
It's very.
Yeah, I mean, if I would recommend, or my 2 cents is, if there's something, try to bring this back a lot more narrowed down to try to really poke at the issue that you want. Because it's just like I said, I can't sign on to 10 pages of more burning regulation. If there's just for me to come on board, it would need to be a really narrow, simple scope. I know that in the attorney world is asking for a lot, but that's just for my comfort. It needs to be pretty plain Jane, exactly addressing what you want, so it's clear and can't be used to go after people.
Yeah, I mean, that does present a problem, because what we try to do is account for, because so comes to us, say, we want you to draft a burning ordinance, like, all right, and so what do we want it to do, and what do we not want it to do, and those things, need to be in there. I don't know, how many times Mike and I, when we used to work together, have, looked at this NRS, and it's just poorly written, because I think they're just trying to speed through it. Ross did work on this extensively to try to cover issues like the restricted time limit. You can in this, you can have a window, and do, but again, I mean, we don't have a dog in this fight, we were just asked to draft this, and
for sure.
we did, but, yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially because of, burning, because we try to mirror it to, you know, kind of industry standards, but also tailor it to White Pine County specifically. So it's, I guess I would need pretty specific direction on how you wanted this pared down. And maybe we can talk about that offline if you want, but, you know, otherwise, like I said, we don't really have a dog in this fight if this is not something that the commission wants to do.
We'd like to say exactly what it says using 25% of the words.
Yeah, like I said.
I would
start out-
say maybe you guys look at just implementing it in your town sites, like the town of McGill, the town of Ruth, where you're gonna have the hazards. The agricultural industry, you know, they gotta burn, like you said, they got timeframes and stuff, and they do, and they already know, if it gets away from them, they're gonna be liable. Like we did ours in the city, was just mainly because in the summertime, we get everybody trying to burn all their weeds and branches, and then the bag of garbage ends up in it, and then the neighbors are complaining because there's swamp coolers pulling it in. Maybe try and narrow it up a bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
To
I think
just
something-
in the areas where you have a chance of the neighbor's house catching on fire. You know, the ranchers burning their ditches and stuff, they've done it forever, and I think I agree with you, you're going down a bad road trying to regulate all them, because they already know if something happens, that's the chance they take, and, you know, they're gonna be fighting with the BLM coming after them to pay the bill, so, maybe something to think about.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wanting, was something a little more simple.
Yeah, I think what Pat said is a sensible way to go about it.
Yes.
So that feedback, I'm just gonna say right here, since you're saying right here, that feedback would have been helpful before we got to the meeting.
Well, I tried to tell Ross when I talked to, when I discussed it with Ross.
Let's have that conversation offline.
Yeah.
All right, Ian, anything to add?
And you guys took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly how I felt about it.
All right, well, we'll move on, from that, if there's nobody else has something. Okay. Alrighty, we're 9:41, so we can't roll the road commission. We'll take, Sheriff Scott Henroy, discuss for possible action approval of the White Pine County Sheriff's Office quarterly report on in-custody deaths.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just my quarterly report. We had no deaths in our correction facility for the quarter, so that's a good thing.
All right, I'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimous. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Lori's here. We'll go to Department Heads, Lori Romero, Senior Program Administrator, discussion for possible action to set Aging and Disability Services Division grant in the amount of $51,136 for homebound meals. There's a $7,670 match. The match will come from the taxes the senior center receives. Lori?
You pretty much said it all.
All right, I'll look for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimous. Item B, discussion for possible action to accept Aging and Disability Services Division grant in the amount of $31,876 for congregate meals. There's a $4,781 match. The match will come from the taxes the senior center receives.
I'll make a
Same
motion.
thing?
to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Check.
I made the motion.
Okay, Richard, motion, Shane second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimous. Thank you.
This has been a Georgetown production. George Chatchis reporting.